Well, folks, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune because it means it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I just love seeing all these heads bouncing and grooving around in the Zoom room as we're getting ready to start the forums edition of the podcast here tonight. I've got the best freaking job in the world because I get to hang out here in front of the mic on Mondays and talk poker strategy with my poker friends. My name is Jim Reed. I'm Blusterini in the home game and at Rec Poker Jim on Twitter while we've still got it. And I am a member of the Wrecking Crew here at Rec Poker. The Wrecking Crew is our leadership group, and it's I'm just one small part of it. And if you want to find out more about me or the other members of the Wrecking Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew. But don't take my word for it. You're going to meet a few of them right here on the air tonight, starting with producing co-host Chris Jones.
Well, I'm Chris Jones. You can find me 5v5 on Threads or 5x5 in the Poker Stars home game.
I'm Kim Kilroy. I am 3056 in the home game, Pet Bet or Pet Bet 33 everywhere else.
And I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Rabman50 just about everywhere.
I'm Taylor Moss. You can find me on X, Taylor_Moss, or in the Rec Poker home game, Gopherboy TJM.
And I got to shout out our sponsors, the amazing Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. Thank you for all your support over the years. We wouldn't be without you. And I have to thank our special guest this week. We've got Abby Merk, who was on the podcast a little while ago. We had so much fun. We said we got to have her back, and she's graciously agreed to come back on the forums and talk a little strategy. Abby, thanks for coming back on the Rec Poker podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Can't wait to tell you guys about all of my punts.
Yes, that's right. So Abby was kind enough to prepare a couple hands to talk about here because this is the forums. We are going to talk a little strategy here, and we're going to start off with a couple spots, a couple empathy building activities here for all of our recreational listeners to understand that punts happen, despite all the best information and training out there in the world. So Abby, yeah, thanks again. Why don't you sort of walk us through? Let's start with one of the hands here. Walk us through a little context for what we're about to get into.
Okay, so we're playing a cash game. It's 1-3. We're playing a live cash game. I've just sat down at my table. Nobody really knows anything about me except for one guy at the table who I've played with a couple times, but this is not the man in question. So the player that I'm playing against knows nothing about me, sits down, brand new, fresh stack. We're going to be playing a $400 stack effective. I have him covered by like 100. So fresh stack, let's jump into it. Okay, so I get dealt in the big blind pocket jacks. I have the jack of clubs and the jack of hearts. Pretty good hand. It is kind of a limpy table. It's not the very first hand that I played about in orbit at this point. People are happy to limp C flops, $3, so cheap, right? Great price. But like certain players at the table were kind of not really doing it with anything, and this guy in question was one of them. So he was limping low pocket pairs. He was limping like.
Okay, there. Sorry, you were saying he was limping some low pocket pairs. Oh no.
He was also he'd been showing.
Abby, I'm sorry. For some reason we're having some trouble picking up your audio. So Abby's playing. She's calling in from a casino floor right here because she's just so in love with the game. She's got to be there in the action. But so we're just cutting in and out just a little bit. I'm not sure.
Okay. Was this better?
That sounds good. Yeah, let's try that one again. So
Okay.
So he's limping a lot. We've established he's doing it with some low pocket pairs. What else is he getting in there with?
Sometimes some like ace X not suited, so like ace 5 off type of things like that. Nothing he really wants to bloat the pot with. And then occasionally some things like things that are close enough to make a straight, but like not really premium holding. So like jack 7 suited, like things like that. So that's the range, his starting range that I'm thinking this particular player is playing. So in this hand, we get 6 limps. Yes, 6 limps.
Oh my God.
Just, your casual 1-3 game, and it limps to me in the big blind. Again, I'm looking down at pocket jacks. So good starting hand. I'm ready to bump this up out of position. I just want to raise that up like bigger. So I choose a $35 sizing. I really want to like ISO. I want to get this potentially heads up. I know this guy's going to float me with pocket pairs. I have all that crushed. So like I'm ready to put some money in. Okay, so this player, he's in the cutoff. He chooses to call. Everyone else folds. So it's heads up at this point. Okay.
So
The
good
flop-
good choice on the sizing then, right? Because that's what you want. That's your goal when you do that, is to get heads up with one of the limping players, thin the field, and bloat the pot when you have a premium hand. Fantastic.
Exactly. Yes. So I'm happy with the result, but there's one thing that I forgot to mention that actually complicates this story just a little bit, which is why I thought we'd start with this. When the small blind who originally limped folded, he flashed his cards where I could see them.
Oh.
So he folds 100% the jack of spades. Sorry, the jack of hearts. Sorry. Whichever red jack I didn't have.
Yeah, you had
The
hearts,
cards
you said. So
kind of
diamonds
important,
then, yeah.
The jack of diamonds.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
He folds the jack of diamonds for sure, and the six of clubs.
Oh
So
God.
he does not fold a spade, which becomes relevant.
Okay.
Okay, so I see him fold this. Yeah, all right. The flop comes jack, 4, deuce. Okay, so
Wow.
there's 2 spades. The jack of spades comes out, and the 6 of spades comes out. So all 4 jacks are accounted for. I know I have top set. I hit a 1-outer. I don't even know like what's going on. Okay, so either way, good hand. Want to bet it. There's spades out there. There's a lot of like funky, weird draws that he could have at this point because as I said before, like he was floating with these like ace 3s or like whatever, something that could be like drawing. He's got potentially some spades in his range as well because he was like float calling these like 7 queen of spades, things like that. So I'm trying to like put some money in the middle. I want to deny his float range basically. So at this point, I have top set. That's the other consideration. So, and I know he doesn't have a jack. Like I'm 100% sure that he does not have top pair here. So for that reason, I actually choose like a little bit smaller of a size than I normally would, especially out of position. I choose a size of 25. Okay.
And the pot's like 70 or so at this point, I guess, with okay, yeah.
So basically just under third pot. He thinks about it for a little bit and ends up raising me. So he makes it 70. So just under a 3x raise. And I'm yeah, exactly, Jim. I'm licking my lips, licking my chops. I'm ready to put some money in here.
Yeah.
But when I'm thinking about what hands, like his perceived range, in my opinion, if he has the set, we're getting the money in now, right?
Yep.
He can have 2s, he can have 4s, like he's definitely possible, given what I kind of put him on. Also, those hands like want to fast play on this particular board too, given the space out there.
Sure.
So I definitely think that when he's raising here, like this is definitely a spot where I can actually re-raise and just get the money in right now. Okay. Because I actually don't even want a spade to come, partially for myself, if he does have one of those like spade combinations, but also kind of an action killer if he has a set himself.
Great point.
So I'm trying to like get the money in with that potential hand. Also, if he has something like potentially like ace deuce of spades or like ace 3 of spades, ace 5 of spades, things like that, I want to get like combo draws, right? Like I want to get the money in with that now. Things like that. I didn't really know what other hands he would be raising me with. Like those are his like semi bluffs and his value hands, right? So like all of these things, I kind of want to repop.
Yeah.
So at this point, yeah, like what do you guys think? What do you guys think I should do here? I can tell you what I did, but
let's talk about it first. I love that. I love that idea. So for me, I think I'm probably re-raising here just to sort of deny equity to those spade hands, because those are the only ones that you don't want to improve, right? And like you say, you're really, it's hard for you to be in a better position here. So it's a good time. It's a good time to get it in. And you never know, he might decide that it's a good time to shove if you do come back over the top with a reasonably sized 3-bet on the flop there. And we want to give him that opportunity to do it. And I guess the alternative is to call, and then you have to make some tricky decisions if a spade comes. And if a spade doesn't come, then I think you still are going to be feeling really, really good about your hand, no matter what comes, for the most part. Maybe some wheel combos there. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, part of my thought on that would be a question, maybe back to you or just for the panel too, just to thinking about is like we mentioned a hand like Queen Seven of Spades is like a like something that this player can have a lot, and like what do you think this player is calling a raise with Queen Seven of Spades? You know, because if they're not, then I'm less liking the raise. But if they're like, I have a draw, I've got an over, you know, maybe they've got better than Queen Seven, maybe they've got, you know, like they're probably calling with any ace X of spades, but I'm kind of curious about this player calling with some of those like slightly worse kind of flush draws. And if they are calling, then I like the raise, and if they aren't, then I maybe want to kind of play this a little bit slower. But I'd be curious what others think too.
I guess the fact that they're a limper makes me think that they're less inclined to take the aggressive line later with the flush draw. But then what are they raising with? Like, what are they raising with here if it's not a flush,
Yeah, I
exactly a
have
flush
no
draw or
idea.
set, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I think this
Interesting.
guy at this point was like, I mean, he wasn't. It's hard to be sick of me when I've literally played in orbit. Like that guy was like, you know, raising a lot to orbit, and like I was in Merk, right? Like I was playing hands, so I'm not sure if he was fuck you raising, right? Like,
yeah.
you're full of it. Maybe
Yeah.
he has like devious plans for future streets. Like if he did have one of those like ace five combos that was offsuit pre-flop, but like he has the ace of spades, right? Like there's a lot of turns that he can bluff on that also might be like, I don't know, maybe he's got devious intentions on future streets. I really don't know. But I do think though, like 100%, the queen eight suited, right, might be like the bottom of his like floating range, but like he also can definitely limp call something like king queen of spades or something like that. Like he was not playing aggressively how he should be pre-flop. Like that should for sure, like I should have to 3-bet you there. And I just like wasn't, because he's just call. So or limp. So I definitely think spades are for sure a possibility.
All right. So
Somebody-
what did our Rob, please.
Somebody who limps like that and plays passively, you have to give him a little more credit for having some sort of a hand if he's
For
going
sure.
to be check raising you, right?
Yeah.
Or raising you. Yes. He has to have some sort of a hand, because otherwise he'd play most of his draws pretty passively. That's just an observation I would make.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I also came to the same conclusion. I just thought he was stronger. I honestly put him on like a lower set. I honestly thought it was going to be a cooler situation.
Yeah.
So I ended up min clicking him.
Oh,
I mean, at this point we're
nice.
playing, we're 400 effective, right? So like
with
the min click, like we're getting it in on the turn, even if the turn is a spade. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it sucks, but like if he jams, I'm just like pot committed, and like I just have to click call with top set. It's totally fine to do that too, I think. So it's like I end up min clicking him. I make it 140. So at this point, he would have had basically like 200 behind at this point, essentially. And so, yeah, so he ends up tanking forever and ends up folding. So I don't know, but he like made this whole big speech about it. He's like, you know, oh, I guess you just have it. Like, oh, I can't even believe it. And then because I told the guy next to me beforehand, like he had showed me one hand earlier, he's like, I really want to see what you have this hand. Like I'm cashing in my one time. I'm like, damn, already? Like shit. So and it's the one hand that I'm like 3-betting like post flop, of course, right? Like I'm like, damn, I didn't really want to show this one. Like, damn. So I end up showing, and the guy goes, oh, like I knew it. Like I knew you just had it. Like, oh my God, what am I doing bluffing into the nuts? So he did end up saying that he was bluffing, which kind of sucks. Definitely, obviously, if I had known that, I would have played the hand differently. But hindsight's 2020, so what can you do? I guess maybe a little bit of a spew to be 3-betting, especially at 1-3. Like the other dynamic that goes into this is like, when are people in 1-3 3-betting post flop as a bluff? Ever. You know what I mean? Like they play very ABC, like whatever. So in order for me to do that, I kind of have to be balancing with other hands, and I'm like, what hands would I have here to even balance like a 3-bet with? You know what I mean? Like maybe ace X of spades, but I have to have like ace deuce of spades or something like that.
Ace five,
where
something
I
like that.
unblock,
Yeah.
like king hands that can like have spades in them as well. So it's just like, it's just gross. And I don't even know that I would 3-bet in that, even in 1-3, because people just are under bluffing. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I don't know. I think it's not the best hand that I've ever played, but it's okay. These things, they happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
But position is kind of like a weird one there, right? Because we're the big blind, they're in position versus us. So if we do call, like, turns aren't played all that easy either. Like
Yeah.
you're kind of checking a lot there. If they're bluffing, you give them an opportunity to check behind and see a free turn and river. Are you ever leading the turn? Like that feels awkward too. So it is a weird spot just from like a position aspect. Like I think position to me is kind of what pushes me towards the raise. If we were in position, like, oh yeah, just call and like let them like keep trying to bluff you off the hand. But I just worry, like, how would we play turns and rivers in this spot?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I actually think that's a fantastic point. I really did not think about that. But like retaking that betting lead is probably pretty important out of position, because if I let him see a turn and it just goes check, like he could 100% be raising to like set his price to see a turn in a river. Like you're totally right. So I didn't even think about that. That's a great point, really. But
so is that a punt? Is that what you consider a punt?
I was just
like
gonna
losing,
say, I wish I won money on all my punts. That would be that
oh
would
my
be that would be
God.
ideal.
I just wasn't sure. Like I was like, look, this next one is pretty bad. Okay.
All right, let's do
Preface,
it.
I tried to bluff an OMC. All right, let's
Okay.
start there.
Okay, all right. This is good. This is starts
This
off
is
well.
more
Let's
of
get
a familiar punt. Yeah,
let's get Rob back in here. Rob, get back. No, okay.
Rob pretends to be an OMC, but he knows how to get his chips in there with the best of them, no doubt about it. Yeah, good image play.
Yeah, it's the worst. I just was okay, let's play the hand.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm actually in position on this guy this time. So this is not a limp spot. This guy ends up, well, actually it kind of is. So pre-flop, it goes like this. It folds around to a middle position player. He limps, so he puts in the $3. This is OMC. I look down at the ace of clubs, the 10 of spades. All right. I raise it up. I make it 15. We're ready to go.
What position are you in? Sorry, Abby.
Button.
Great.
Yes. Everyone else folds, so it's just heads up with me and Mr. OMC, my love, my sweetie pie. His name is Frank. Shout out Frank. He's the goat. Okay. I never played with this guy before though. Preface on him. He likes to be calling. He was doing this weird move where he was like limp jamming, and it would be for up to like $200. So he would literally have like $200 in front of him, and he was limp jamming anything from like ace queen off to ace king to like jacks plus. So definitely not a weak jamming range, but he wanted to get most drawing hands in pre-flop, and it seemed as though he was relatively tighter. Haven't really seen him. Go ahead.
So does that really cap his range when he doesn't come back over the top? Like when he calls your raise, that really means that he like the best hands he's got are tens and ace jack essentially.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So I definitely, and that's like the best, right? Like he had been in there with some other hands. Obviously pocket pairs he's seeing flops with. Playing those like loose passively, or not even loose. He's just like tight passive, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, yeah. So we're heads up, $30 in the pot, or $34 in the pot, 35. We're just gonna round $35 in the pot with the small blind and the big blind. The flop comes 3 clubs. So it comes the queen of clubs, the 7 of clubs, and the 4 of clubs. So dynamic board in the club sense, but not really in the. Oh, I'm sorry. It was not a 7. It was an 8. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The queen 8 4. So either way.
And we've got the ace, so we're feeling pretty good about this board so far. Yeah.
I'm in position. Like I'm trying to put some money in this pot, for sure. Because even if I don't have the best hand, like I can be bluffing it. And with the ace high flush. I'm pumping money in this a lot of the time. So in that sense, I kind of want to be polar like right off the start, in case I don't improve. I don't know that ace high is going to be good given the fact that he's got like, you know, like some sevens, he's got tens in his range, right? Like things that are probably going to float to one bet, right? So in this spot, I actually bet 25. So I bet like 3/4 pot essentially. And he flats me. Okay. Turn is an 8. So it's a board pairing card.
Ooh,
8 of diamonds, gets a little spicy. I don't really think he has a set. Sets are definitely just not really in his range, whereas I can have a lot of sets. Specifically queens, I guess, but like I can also just like have, actually I think I have a lot of eights too. Like I can have like 8-9 suited, I can have like 8-10 suited, I can have 7-8, things like that. So this is definitely a card that I actually want to keep betting on. It's just going to make it harder for him to call with those hands that I'm kind of putting him on. Like tens with a club like gets uncomfortable, right? Like and I definitely still want to be polar. Like even if he has a flush right now, I have the ace of clubs, so I'm blocking the nuts. So, or the nut flush, I should say, no longer the nuts.
Right,
but I just have like so much, so I'm choosing to continue betting. So at this point, there's like 85 bucks in the pot. So I start to go polar again. So I actually bet 75, which is a big bet. I'm definitely trying to set up a river jam since, oh, I'm sorry, this is kind of important. If he calls the 75, he has like 150 behind. So the reason why I'm betting 75 is also to set up that river jam on, obviously if I hit, great. And if I don't, I'm going broke anyway.
And I just want to give you a kudos here, because I think a lot of our audience, because we cater to recreational players, I think they don't appreciate how important it is to work back from the river and build a pot such that, you know, you can really put a lot of pressure on with that river play. So the amount that you bet on the flop and on the turn, you should be thinking about there's the effective stack, how much are they going to have back on the river, and how can we make that a really uncomfortable number for them when the time comes.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that was my plan. I was betting with the plan to jam river. So I bet 75, and he tanks for a little bit. It wasn't super long, nothing like fishy, but definitely like wasn't a snap. And then ends up making the call. And at this point, I know he has a hand. He's not doing that with tens. He's not doing that with jacks, right? Like he's doing that with like a queen. He's doing that with an 8. He's doing that with obviously if he does have a set and he's just milking me, he's doing that with like 4s, right? Like he could definitely be doing that. I don't think he has queens, right? But like, because I think he's just jamming that pre, but like he's definitely doing that with like 4s, for sure. And then he's also doing that with some like flushes, right? So if he has like 10 jack of clubs, right? Like that's something he could have. Even if he has something like 5-6 of clubs, I guess he could do something like that. So
he does. He has got the redraw for the straight flush in both those cases. So he's definitely, he can still improve. Yeah.
For sure. So anyway, so he just calls. The river is a 3 of diamonds. So totally bricked. I'm sitting there with ace high. I have the ace of clubs. That's about it. And he actually does something interesting at this point. So keep in mind that he has 150 left in his stack. Yeah. And he leads out for 40.
Oh.
Yeah. What are you guys thinking? Are you done with it? Do you fire? Do you re-raise? God. Right? Like, what are we thinking here? What would you guys do?
I'll let the crowd think about it here for a second. I'll go first. It can't be a bluff, can it? Like, it's just so small. I do get into this spot sometimes where it's like, it's a pretty dirty bluff spot. Like if he thinks that you're a player who can recognize hand ranges, then it's not something that a lot of recreational or like inexperienced players are going to make a small bet there. But against this, like coming from this player, it feels like you're getting milked here. Like it feels like they're really trying to just get some value. They don't want you to check behind. And it feels like value to me. It does. What about the rest of the group here? Rob?
Yeah, it's a typical blocker bet. So if he knows anything about poker, he's looking at it, well, I don't have a real strong hand. So maybe he's got something, a small flush, and he's worried about a bigger flush. So he's going to throw in that little bet try to get a little value. And if you come over the top, that could be, he could fold. He could fold that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think knowing that you're an aggressive player, he might bet bigger if he had a bigger hand, like a full house or something like that. So
Yeah, I think I could also see him doing this with an 8 if he had an 8x hand. That would make sense here. And then yeah, you like sometimes with some of these players, I wonder, like, do they know that it's a bet fold, or are they just betting and then they don't haven't thought about what's going to happen next, you know? So it's really
Yeah,
player
see,
dependent there. Chris?
that's what I'm wondering. It's interesting you say that, Rob, because it really depends on the player. I think there are players where they can have just a monster here, and they're just like, I don't want you to check back, but if I go all in, you're just going to fold. I want to try to get what little I can out of my quad eights or something. And I wouldn't put them. I would not say they can't have a full house here. I think that they very much could. But still, I think they can very much have some hands that they will have to fold. I think this is where it's really player dependent, but I think there's a lot of players that can have a queen here, especially a queen with a club, like king queen with the the king of clubs or something makes a lot of sense for this kind of small bet. And I think that's a hand we can probably get them off of. And I think there's some other ones like that we can get them off of, but it's scary to come over the top of this because I think there can be a ton of strength in this.
Now we're getting a really good price. If we can get them to fold, like we're going to win a decent sized pot here, and it doesn't cost us that much. I guess so. The only thing we can't do is call, I think. Does that sound right? Yeah. Okay.
100% agree. Calling not in the question. I think at this point, because this was pretty recently, so I've been playing for a couple hours at this point, and my image was pretty good. Like I hadn't shown down many non-strong hands. Like I hadn't been caught in my bluffs. Like I really was like I was perceived as tighter than I was being, even though I was playing a lot of hands. I was definitely just picking my spots and like showing down strong ones. So I think my image was good. If I'm gonna have a bluff, I have a good hand to do it. The thing that I don't really like about my hand selection in particular is because I have a 10, which isn't great for me because I actually would rather have like something like ace king offsuit here because I want to be unblocking those like straight draws that I want him to be flipping with and then forced to kind of like stab river. I think the 10 is actually a really bad card for me to have in this specific scenario, but if I'm going to have bluffs, like this is a line that I was setting up a river jam for, and I have the ace of clubs, like it's not like I'm pulling that out of my butt. So I did end up jamming, and he beat my ass into the he literally snapped me. But he didn't have what I thought he had. He actually had jack 7 of clubs, so he flopped a flush. But I was like astounded when I'm like, this man is showing down jack 7. I'm like, holy shit. Like, I just reevaluated my entire range that I put you on. Like, let's go, OMC. Like, you're killing it. You got me. Like, nice hand, right? I'm not even kidding you. That was the last hand I played before I came on in this interview, too. So I'm like, fuck.
Amazing. That's awesome.
Like, dusty stack in front of me now, too. I'm like, damn. This would have been so much more impressive if I would have won the hand.
Yeah. That's a really good spot, though. I mean, I think it really. I mean, he really did throw you for a loop with that lead on the river. Like that's not in the textbook. That's not like it. That's not the usual flow that we expect from this kind of stuff. So if he had checked, do you think you were probably shoving anyway? That was the plan that you had, right?
Yeah. 100%. I was jamming. I actually like the thing was if he was a little bit deeper, also maybe the jam is a little bit better because when you're putting in 40 and you have like 150 behind, it's just kind of like an awkward sizing to fold for like 90 more. So even if he has, for example, the jack high flush that he would have folded if he had like 200 behind, and now he only has like 110, and you're just sitting there and you're like, well, I've already put in this much, like nice hand. So I don't know. That was something else I could have thought about, but like to be honest with you, he'd been playing I don't know. I thought I could get the fold in the moment, and I kind of just went with my read there, and so
Yeah.
I was wrong. So
Yeah. Now,
nice hand.
yeah, nice hand. Before we let you go, I know we're gonna have you back next week to talk about some other hands as well. But you mentioned at the very beginning something that came up, that comes up from time to time with me, because the only way I know how to make money in this game is by flopping sets. That's my thing. I
Yeah.
flop sets. I get paid with my sets. That's how I make money.
Yeah.
It often, like surprisingly often, when I get dealt a pocket pair, a card gets exposed and it's one of my cards. So how does that affect? I mean, and I don't have the Merk power of just pulling the one outer on the flop there, all the time. So how does that affect for Abby, but also for the rest of the panel here? How does that affect your decision making process? Because you really were at a pivot point there in that Jack's hand where half your outs just disappeared, and you're the only person who knows it.
Right.
Did it occur, like, was it part of your decision making process at that point to be like, should I just like not play a big pot here because like I have a lot less chance of improving? Like the only way you can improve is by hitting a jack, and that's not nearly as likely anymore. What do you think about in that moment?
I'm definitely one to say play your equity and play like I'm for sure given action like pre-flop at an advantage. Like I know I have the best hand right now.
Yeah.
Obviously reevaluating on later streets is really important because if, for example, the flop had come like king, queen, four, and like they don't like my opponent 100% just like doesn't have a jack, or like it's very, very unlikely that they would have a jack because the jack wouldn't have come, right? Like then it's way different because I know like, all right, you probably don't have jack 10 here. You're probably not like floating me with like a draw, right? So like you can use obviously that information to your advantage, but also like I would say this too. Let the person know if you can see their hand, right? Like just be honorable.
Yes.
Like after the hand like had played out, because it's so awkward mid hand, especially when I'm getting like a call after I'm like raising ginormous, for me to be like, hey, by the way, I just saw your hand, and then like completely interrupt action. So like after the hand, I literally just let the guy know. I'm like, look, I can see you when you pull your cards that way. And at that point, to be honest, my personal rule is if you've let them know once, it's on them at that point to protect their cards. Like I totally like think that if they're going to show you their cards, like it's your advantage as soon as you've let them know. But like it does kind of put me in an awkward spot too, because like morally I know like jack six is gone, right? So I'm like, do I say mid hand like, oh, that's exposed? Like honestly I probably should have. But it's like it's just such an awkward like break of flow, I guess, that I didn't. But like honestly in hindsight I'm like, maybe I should have and just like kept everything above board. I don't know, maybe the hand plays out differently when he knows a jack is less likely. Maybe
I mean, it probably plays out
with a flush draw. Like I don't know.
It's pretty good for you once the jack comes on the flop. Like if you're like, oh, by the way, this guy folded a jack, like that's actually pretty good for you. I'm from Canada, so I always tell them the second time as well when I can see their cards, and then after that, we've done our job to tell them.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? What's the etiquette in that spot, Kim?
I think I'm not used to cash games, so I'm not aware of the proper etiquette, but I think in tournaments, when you see a player's hand and there's other people in the hand, you need to let the other people in the hand know what you've seen. That's just always what I see in tournaments. So if it was obvious or whatever, if you're not sure, then that's fine. But if it's an obvious, oh, that hand was exposed, here's what I saw.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then is that only when you're in the hand or when you're not in the hand?
Oh, good.
If you're not in the hand, does it really matter?
No.
Yeah, good point.
Right.
But if you're in the hand, you have an advantage in the hand that the other players in the hand don't have, and that's not really
proper etiquette.
Proper etiquette in poker.
Taylor, you unmuted for a second.
Yeah,
Taylor.
I was just going to add to I tell them once, usually people get way more offended than they should when you're just trying to like be nice and being like, hey, I can see when you're folding, and all of a sudden it's like, why are you looking? What? I'm not. I'm watching the table. Like I can see the cards flip up, and like you lift them up, and I can see there's 3 diamonds on that card, and then you're pitching them in. So people
Yeah.
get way more offended than they should. So I always think saying it a second time is probably going to cause you a little bit more harm than good, but once has to be the moral obligation.
Yeah, I was in a
Definitely.
cash game one day at Canterbury, and this guy, he seemed to be kind of out of it a little bit. Not like he was drunk, but just not really
Oh.
all there.
Got it.
And
You
he
can
was
just
showing his,
you can say it was me, Rob. There's no strangers here. You can let them know it was me in the hand.
it was so weird because he kept, when he looked at his cards, I didn't even have to try to look. I would always see what he had. And I told him 2 or 3 times, and he just kept doing the same thing. So I just quit telling him. I just, after that, I just, that is what it is.
Yeah. I was playing against a player once who would occasionally just like under their breath mutter the hand that they had. Like I couldn't believe it. There's just like they'd look and they'd be like, ace 5. I sort of at one point I was like, sir, I'm developing a tell on you that I think I should share. Just that you're verbalizing your holdings. I wonder if some people might like do a little like reverse tell there from time to time, but it probably doesn't come up often enough to make it worth it.
Aces again? I mean, what are the
Yeah,
odds?
right. I do that from time to time. I do that one.
Oh man, 5 people to the flop. Wouldn't it be crazy if someone had 5-5?
Yeah.
Literally what Jim did at Rec Poker Day.
Yeah, I did. That's true. That was one. That was a good one. Yeah. And I got him. We got him. All right, Abby. Well, that was awesome. Thank you for, and I think, you're an accomplished player. I think a lot of our audience is recreational folks who might get a little embarrassed sharing hands where they didn't win or where they made a mistake or something like that. But, you really have to share the hands where you've made errors if you ever want to improve. You can't be proud and just only share hands where you've won and where you've made great decisions because you're just feeding your ego. Like you need to improve by having people tell you what you could do differently, what you could do better. So kudos and thank you for sharing those. That was great.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Well, let's roll on out of here, and we'll come back next week with another episode of the Rec Poker Podcast Forums Editions. Thanks to Abby, Merk, Taylor, Chris, Kim, and Rob, and of course the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and you, the listeners. Thanks for all your support. We'll see you next week on the Rec Poker Podcast. All right, have a good night, everybody.